Hi everybody, Jill here with my next planner collab video. It's already almost April. Today is Good Friday. And hopefully I'll have this video all good and set to go by tomorrow morning. Really, it's going to be more of a journal flip, although it is my planner. The last page I showed you last month was this one, and it was early. It was the 20th of February because we have since moved our date for our video to the 1st of the month, which is really going to work for me because after I made my video I still had all these journal pages after the 20th and the 21st. So let me try and move along quickly because I have a whole filled up journal to show you. This was just more fountain pen work with a water brush and writing. I went over with a little colored pencil, it looks like, on that one. This girl is all watercolors, my Jane Davenport watercolors. She's beautiful. She was from a reference picture on Pinterest. February 22nd, I obviously was dealing with a lot of change, and still am dealing with a lot of change at work. So I was processing some of that with doodling and writing. This page I'm not happy with. I was working on eyes because the page back here, I had a hard time getting the dark watercolors around the eyes without lifting the colors underneath. So I was just working on that and some sketching. February 23rd, more fountain pen work and doodling. I love this page. I could do that all day long. I like line work. The 23rd, watercolor girl. I started her with pencil and then did her with watercolor. February 24th, 25th, fountain pens and doodles. Seems like I could do that a lot. And I use, again, I covered that in my last video, but I use a watercolor brush. And I don't really seem to have one handy, but once it's done, I take a wet brush and spread the watercolor around, the ink around, like watercolor. I never get tired of that either. Okay, so I had to guess where to put my March month at a glance all the way back on the 20th. So I picked a certain amount of number of days and I missed. Because you can see here, this was February 25th, and I still had 3 more days until I hit March. But this was already lined out and in here. So my month at a glance is really working well for me. I'm going to continue using that in the next journal. I tracked my shots again, my art projects at work, my to-dos. This has helped me to stay organized and stay aware of what's going on in the week ahead. Having it with me every morning when I do my journaling. And then I also take this to work. I have a messenger bag I call my art bag, and I take, even though this journal's huge, I take it and some basic art supplies with me to work every day. I don't always get to do anything in it, but it's there if I need to look at anything. Over here is my memorabilia from the month. It was the flower show. I left some, I use this, I have to put more washi tape under here because that keeps lifting off. But I like the flaps. It gives me more writing room. This is a workshop I signed up for, the hotel reservations, my to-do list for the month, notes for things I need to fill in for April, since I haven't done my, at this point, hadn't done my April planner page yet. So, this is working. I plan on doing this in my next journal. This is my oil page from March. I don't know if you watched my last planner video, but my oil section was one little section of this notes page, and now it's a whole page, and I'm pretty sure next month my oil page is going to move to a 2-page spread. These are your points on your feet that you can apply essential oils to. These are all different mixtures for in my diffuser. Some research. I ordered bergamot this month, and this is there's a lot of learning in these, where they come from, how they're made, what they're used for. So I plan on taking one a month and researching it and knowing fully what it's about. My wish list for the next month, what I wanted to order in oils. And you know, see this little clip here? This is in case I want to go back to March. Next one, I want to incorporate some sort of tab, I think, if my month at a glance is in the middle, because it would make it easier to find it when I needed it. This page was based on an old lesson or picture of Christy Sobolewski And she had a girl similar to this, although she didn't have this up here. This was supposed to be a sun. It looks more like a, I don't know, like a storm or an explosion, storm cloud. But I love this page. And I printed this offline. And this girl was on a piece of trash in the top of the trash can, a piece of junk mail after my husband had paid bills. So I grabbed it, cut her out, cut out the stamp, and this is a little mini collage at the bottom. I struggle with collage, so this was my mini effort at it. I love that page. This girl, she turned out really weird. She's really narrow-faced. It was all my Koi travel watercolors, and I pretty much had felt that my Koi watercolors were just as good as the Danielle Smiths. And looking at this, no. You know, I see they're chalky, they mix differently, I don't know. I can feel it when I put my hand across. It feels different. This is my White Witch from Christy's lesson, Paint in the Dark. Wonderful lesson series. Thank you so much, Christy. And this was my White Witch page. She's almost all Danielle Smith watercolors. Almost all Danielle Smith. I'm missing a few colors. I don't have a wide range, so there's a few Jane Davenports in there. And some colored pencil and some pen work. Love it. I'm still in February, even though we're past the March page. I did this journal block here with my blue pen, and I thought it looked like an American flag. So I went through, it's kind of silly, but I went through and I did my journaling in stripes, and I went through some magazines and picked out images that spoke to me about America. And each one of these images has its own personal meaning to me. It's not the best collage effort, but I keep trying. Friday, March 2nd. We're finally into March. I missed a few days there. Finally into March. The flower show started. The Philadelphia Flower Show. My husband's heavily involved. So I did this girl, and this kind of represents the different displays that they have locked out at the convention center. And these are abstract flowers in honor of the flower show. I love doing these. When I look back through this journal and I see what just brings me joy, this is one thing that always brings me joy. And I visit it regularly. Tulips we saw at the flower show. Some different girls in my orange and yellow fountain pens. Some more journaling. Nothing new, nothing exciting, but they're pretty. This was my order for my oils. I got tired of every time you set your order up the month ahead. And during that month, you have a chance to change your order and alter it. And I got tired of putting in my password and going to the website every time I wanted to consider my order. So I wrote it down here. And it did change, but this is what I had ordered at that time. I got Derwent water-soluble sketching pencils. And this was my first try using them. They're wonderful. I love them. You sketch with the graphite, and then you can use a brush and smear it around. And I went over top with some of the darkest pencil. You can probably see where it's shiny, and I didn't use the water. So once you use the water on it, it loses its shine and gets a nice matte finish. But the darkest details that went in, I didn't use water, so they're still kind of shiny, and they will transfer onto the next page. This page is more of the sketch pencils. I was going to do a still life that morning. It was a snow day, Wednesday, 3/7. I called out from work. I had a beautiful morning to sit and do a still life, and this is the cyclamen plant from in my kitchen. But then once I started in the pencil, I had to add 2 colors of watercolor. I love cyclamen. It's one of my favorite flowers. And it's in a little mason jar. It's a cute plant. This was my art journal collab page. I did a whole video on that. This page was, I just slapped down watercolors, some big words that bled in because it was still wet, and then I went over top with my journaling, and I'm not sure which pen. I should write it down. It was either this black Pentel color brush or this Pentel pocket brush. I'm not sure which one. I do know that I really don't like the way the brush markers, these kind of brush markers, work on the textured paper. It gives a very dry brush look. But it's okay. I'm learning. This page here is probably one of the most important pages in my journal. You'll see I washi taped it in. It was not originally done in my journal planner. It has to do with a session I had had with a patient at work. I facilitate arts and crafts groups, and the patient had done some art that was very disturbing to me and yet beautiful, and I came home and I had to process it. So this is my version, loosely based on his work of that day, and when I look at it, I just get so much of an emotional impact. It's never the kind of thing that I would frame and hang, but I needed to put it somewhere to keep it, so I taped it in here. And I think there might be more work coming from that one. This is all done in the water-soluble pencils. And it was done quickly. It was a quick sketch. Really important to me. So on this side, I used more of the water-soluble pencils and did this rather fussy. I don't like to work this fussy. You know, I could sit here and tell you, oh, I love the highlight in her hair. This ear turned out really good. But really, all I see is that her eyes are terribly crooked. This eye is too high and that eye's too low. And when it's this fussy and precise, to me, those kind of things jump out. I much prefer working loose. And if every line isn't perfect and everything isn't lined up perfect, I just love loose much better. Oh, I'm sorry, I just bumped the camera. Now that's wobbling all over. My new camera set up that the arm goes right over my head, and if I turn my head the wrong way, I bump the camera. So this girl's adorable. This was my fountain pen and watercolor brush. This girl I started in pencil, and I used a single color of Danielle Smith Shadow Violet. It's a very versatile color. Look at all the different tones you can get with that. This page is about 3/14. That's the day the students organized the walkout from school. And this page is all about the hope for the future that I find in the students and young people who are getting active and getting politically active and trying to make a difference. And I so respect them. So I actually left some writing that can be read versus my scribbling that no one can ever read. And here are the list of the survivors from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School that have become so active. But I think somewhere I need to commemorate the students that died in that shooting too. That might end up on another page. On a less serious note, on the 15th, I did a little sketch with my water-soluble graphite and some doodling and some writing. And I said I bring my journal and my art bag to work every day, but once in a while I don't. I'm just tired of lugging around a whole bunch of bags in the morning. So on my cubicle at work, I keep these half sheets of watercolor paper. And a couple of very simple art supplies, some drawing pencils, a stump, a kneaded eraser. So if I have some time at lunch and I want to sit down and draw something. So I drew this girl at my cubicle at work, and then, you know, what do you do with her? You got a half page. So I put her in here in a flap. I put on some washi tape. I watercolored this to match the background. And underneath, I felt like painting a tree. So I used a fine watercolor brush, painted a tree, and did some journaling. That was 3/16. This girl wouldn't transfer because she was almost all wet with the water-soluble, but this girl was transferring like crazy. So I used my inexpensive fixative, my Krylon, on a few pages in this book that had heavy graphite that were transferring. I don't like to worry about an art journal that much. If it transfers, it transfers, but I don't know, it was bothering me. So a few of these pages got a quick spray with the Krylon. Just more fountain pen work. Doodling, some cone flowers, some journaling. This girl has a very awkward pose, but hey, it is what it is. This day I wanted to try doodling some different flowers, and they ended up more than doodles. They ended up pretty much realistic, going from pictures off of Pinterest. But I really like these flowers here, so I did this girl, some pencil and some I think I used a little set of Prismacolor Premier Fine Line markers that I had just purchased recently. And since I love those flowers, I added those there. This girl is not my style at all, but it's good to try something outside of your comfort zone once in a while. And that's a pretty page. I like it. This girl was the water-soluble graphites. Once I get a hold of a new thing, I have to use it for a while and in different ways. And then on top, I used two different mermaid markers, the Jane Davenport mermaid markers, a Byron Bay and a Reef. And I love the deep colors. And then I activated some of that with water. Used the same ones over here for some abstract flowers the next day, March 21st, some journaling. I put this clip here so I wouldn't accidentally show you the page. And here is the page I'm working on for the next art journal collab challenge. Didn't want to give you a sneak peek. Squirrels, water, pencil, and then watercolor. To get a different style and to break out of all my faces looking the same, I looked up some pictures of the ball-jointed dolls, and this was a ball-jointed doll, and it's a very different mouth and a very different nose than I ever do. The whole thing, everything is different. And I learned a lot. This nose and this nose are two noses totally different. I find myself always doing the exact same nose. So this was a good learning experience, and this mouth is very different than ones I normally do. This girl, I just went without a reference picture, and a lot of that is pretty common to me, like I said, except for the different nose. So we're up to 322. I gotta quick, this could be a long video. This day I swatched out some of these brush pens. I've been picking up these brush pens one at a time. This is the gray barrel, the black barrel, the light pigment wash, and the pocket brush. And look, it was bothering me. I'm like, barrel, that doesn't look right. Well, I spelled barrel wrong 3 or 4 times. There's not 2 L's in barrel, but whatever. And I wanted to find out exactly how much they smudge when they're wet, how much they react to water, how they work on the textured paper. This one down here, the pocket brush, it wouldn't flow. I'm like, boy, I hate this pen. And then I opened it up. This is the little pocket brush. It's a smaller brush than the others. But look, I opened it up and it was not a fair test. The cartridge is empty. So sorry about that, pocket brush. Maybe I need to do a new trial when I have a new cartridge in there. So, I'm going to move my stuff over. Oh, and I tapped the camera again. I'm so sorry. I went loosely and put down some random watercolor. I was hoping to not do flowers. I always do flowers. So some is flowers and some is abstract, and there's some doodling in there. That's a Prismacolor brush tip marker, which is a much smaller brush tip than any of these and much firmer. It's not a true brush. It's hard to explain. So, the 24th, I was just practicing some profiles in pencil, my Saturday to-do list. I actually did pretty well. I got almost all of those things done but one. I didn't want to go any further on that page. I just left the sketch. And that day, I went to Michael's looking for another one of these journals because now I'm getting close to the end and I know I need my next journal for next month. And they didn't have my journal. I was upset. But they had these, the Jane Davenport Power Pastels, which I had been wanting for a while. I love oil pastels. I don't work in them very often, so I don't want to buy an expensive set. I have some student grade, some small sets, and I love them. I did one beautiful oil pastel that hangs in my living room. And when these first came out, the tins were being sold empty, so they had to recall them, fix the manufacturing problem. So I've been waiting. I had a 60% off coupon, so I got these for about $12, and I was so excited. They're not oil pastels. She calls them smudging crayons, and they're much closer to a crayon than they are to an oil pastel. I hate to say I'm disappointed, but I'm disappointed. Comes with a blender, but it also works as a resist. You'll see that on the next page. So I had my new set. I did a water-soluble graphite picture and thought, well, let me see if I can tone it with some of these, but they're so hard. They only hit the top edges of the texture paper. You can't possibly get these crayons down into the valleys of the texture paper. And I didn't like her. I thought it turned out ugly. I'm like, here's my first try at Power Pastels. Meh, they're more like crayons than oil pastels. But I determined to find some way to use them since I bought them. Or, you know, I could just give them away, right? To somebody who would love them. This page, I looked up some videos on some different ways to use them. And they use the crayons first. And this is where I used the blending crayon as a resist. And then watercolored over top. So it's a little better. This one was smudging terribly to the other page. I had a piece of paper in there. So I got out my expensive. The reason I showed you my workable fixative earlier is I have an expensive version of fixative just for oil pastels. I spent a lot of money and purchased this online through Dick Blick. It's by Sennelier. Someday I'm going to have a set of Sennelier oil pastels. I hope. But I bought this just to use on my better oil pastel works, and it really works. It gives the top of your oil pastels a nice hard finish that you can touch and rub and nothing moves. I mean, I wouldn't dig at it with a sharp point, but it gives your top surface. And now I can run my hand over this and nothing moves, nothing smudges, nothing's going on to the next page. So that can is expensive, but it's worth it for a few things. This one, instead of the fixative, I tried this. My friend gave me Tim Holtz Distress Glaze, Micro Distress Glaze. And it's this little jar, and it's like a Vaseline type. You put the tiniest bit on your finger, and you polish it on. Oh, I bumped the camera again. Don't tell me I'm going to have to redo this video. And you polish it on, and it leaves a shiny, and then you can even take a paper towel or a facial tissue and buff it off. And it does set so that none of my crayons are smudging or moving, and none are transferring onto the other page, but it does leave a little bit of a slightly sticky, off-putting texture. I've used it on other things, though, that it didn't leave that. So, interesting. Just a side note on how I'm sealing these pages so they don't make a mess in my journal. Back to my favorite, my fountain pen watercolor. More. I can move along more quickly. Aren't these girls awesome? This girl I started with pencil. These were strictly all fountain pen, no pencil. Get what you get. It's really good practice, and it builds my confidence a lot to, even when a line doesn't come out right, to make it work. I wanted to try one sideways. I don't think I can turn it sideways and still have it in the camera. She's big, and she's intense. Her color turned out so bright. I'm not sure she's finished. I wanted to put some patterning in her dress or some patterns in the background, but I didn't want all the attention to be down on her dress. So, I don't know. I don't think she's done, but basically I'm done working on her. This was just yesterday, 3/29. This is something I love to do. I could do it forever, and I haven't done it in a while. It's all just one Jelly Roll black pen. No pencil. Go in, draw a face, own your mistakes, whatever happens, happens, and making this kind of line work. The hair, you could tell I enjoyed the hair so much I had to go over and do all of this kind of almost creepy looking surreal stuff. I could fill a whole page with just these. So I did another girl's face, and I love their hair. I don't know. Maybe just because I did it yesterday, but I feel like I need to do that a few more times. This morning, I also realized I hadn't done in a while was my fountain pen, but then spraying it with a water bottle. And I love that ethereal look, too. I could have kept going. I could have kept going with layers of other colors and more spray, but I liked her so much like that. And sometimes my morning work is really simple. So, I'm at the end. I have one more day, tomorrow the 31st, and then the next day is April 1st. I still have to do the cover. I will show you next month what I decided to do on the cover. I'm pretty sure it's going to be just a simple 2 or 3 colors, soft blended acrylic. I have to gesso it first. It got really dirty in use. It didn't bother me. I love this soft feel of the canvas cover in my hands during the month while I'm using it. Now that I'm going to put it on a shelf, I'll have a nice acrylic paint on the outside of it. And if I go through, I mean, I finished this journal in 2 months. If I go through a journal every 2 months, at the end of a year, I could have 6 of them in a shelf, and they might look pretty. I never did the front page. I don't know. I don't know if I'll skip it at this point or go back and do something. I do know I got my next journal. Remember I said I was upset I couldn't find it? Well, I found one at a different Michael's. Somebody had taken the plastic off, and it was dirty and open on the shelf, and they gave me a small discount. But I got my next journal. Oh, it's upside down. And I think I'm going to switch it up a little. I'm going to put March and April right inside the front cover. That's going to be my job. The rest of this holiday weekend, it is Easter weekend. I'm going to do March and April, month at a glance. And then it'll be right here in the front for 2 months. So I can always find my calendars. The next 2 pages will probably be my oils page. I need to start inventorying my oils and more specifics on how I'm using them and how it works for me. And, you know, in this other one where I had memorabilia, let me get rid of this. This kind of memorabilia is just all going to have to go in on my daily pages because I'm going to have my 2 month at a glance together. So, I hope this wasn't too long and tedious, and I hope you like getting a glimpse into not only my planning, but my art journal. And remember, this is a collaborative video, so please check for any links below. I know that Christy will have one, and hers is always worth looking at. Her planners are beautiful. So thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up, and I will see you again next month.